there. There we go. All right. Had to work a few glitches out here. This is Mac Bolin, and tonight going to talk about firearm training. Before we get started, I'd like to give some shout outs to some of our veteran and Facebook site friends: Mike Urchina, Spotter Up Team Room, Ace Deuce, Gunslinger Savage, Maxwell, TFI, Brad Simpson, AGTR, all my friends on Section 8, and of course, the folks at Grunt Style T-Shirts here in the Chicago area who provide awesome T-shirts, not just from their own place, but sell through several others. And of course, Black Rifle Coffee Company. Now, if you're a gun owner, if you have a permit, if you're a concealed carrier, it is your responsibility to learn how to use your weapon safely, accurately, maintain it, and store it securely. And on that note, I'm going to go ahead and go to my special guest tonight, Robert Butler. Robert, welcome to the program. And if you would, please tell everybody your background and what you are currently doing.
Okay, I can do that. My name's Robert Butler, obviously. My business is K-Not's Tactical Group. We are a firearms training academy here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. My background, I'm an 18-year veteran of the military. Can I ask you a favor? Turn your microphone or your speaker down.
Sure.
A little bit while I'm talking. Yeah, it's really echoing.
Okay, no problem.
All right.
Better?
Yeah, that's a little better.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just listening to myself talk and echo in your ear there. But at any rate, we provide firearms training here in Colorado Springs and nationally now. We provide anything from basic pistol to advanced pistol, basic carbine to advanced carbine. We have a vehicle counter ambush course that we do, and several other firearms related type training courses, one being medical, which is pretty rare that anybody's doing that right now. Go back to my background a little bit. I'm an 18-year veteran of the United States Army and Army National Guard. I'm also a former law enforcement officer in the state of Colorado. I spent about 3 years doing that. About 5 years ago, I started training full-time here in Colorado Springs and have been going ever since. So we've grown exponentially over the last 5 years. It's been pretty good.
Okay. So let me ask you, what is like the makeup of your students? You know, because you travel, you don't just teach there in Colorado Springs, but you travel. So what is the typical makeup of the people who come to your courses?
Pretty much everybody. I mean, our youngest student is 6 years old, and we've had him back a couple times with parents, of course. Regular, everyday people looking to protect themselves from, you know, what's out there today and what's happening today. Military guys, I've got guys in the military that come out and train with us because they don't get enough trigger time on post here at Fort Carson. I've had guys from 10th Group come out. I have law enforcement come out. Regular civilians, age 6 to my oldest student, I believe, is 89 this year. So we pretty much run the gamut of students. I mean, we have just the most part normal people, you know, normal everyday people looking to defend themselves come out and train. So,
yeah, I was formerly in 10th Special Forces Group for a while there at at Fort Carson.
Yep.
So tell me now, as an instructor, what are some of the most common mistakes or faults that you see, the things that you see that people normally do wrong because they've never been trained properly?
Really, kind of the biggest thing is with our students coming into initial classes, we're talking introductory type classes or intro to defensive handgun or concealed permit courses, is not knowing what they don't know. And I think that's the biggest mistake I see. They'll come in with the attitude that maybe they know how to shoot, or they've been to the range and they can cut circles and dimes, and that's great. But the applicability in a defensive situation for that skill, although important to know the fundamentals, it really kind of lacks, because we don't have the luxury of time in a defensive shoot, and it takes time and effort to shoot, quote, accurately and well, and not defensively accurate. Those types of students haven't ever practiced drawing from the holster, for example. So it's a little bit of a shocker when they come into class, and the first things we start talking about are natural body responses to a threat, or how to properly present a firearm from the holster, or neurological effects of a threat encounter, and the fact that you really can only do one thing at a time unless you've created neural pathways to allow you to repeat a process without conscious thought. A lot of the science behind shooting is missed by a lot of people, and they don't really have the understanding yet until they come through one of our defense pistol courses, that they really don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, I totally understand. Now, do you also teach, the classic, the condition white, yellow, orange, red?
No.
But you make them understand,
Right.
like yeah, okay.
Yeah, we do teach situational spatial awareness and things like that. But the condition code thing, I'm really not a big fan of that. The live in yellow, mantra is pretty, it's pretty passe and pretty, it's like going out in the 90s. And it's impossible to be, quote, in yellow your whole life. It's not, you're going to get surprised. Sure. And that's why we train for that surprise. We train for that shock. You don't go into a subway thinking that you're going to get into a gunfight. It's important to be aware. And we do talk about, especially in our vehicle counter ambush courses, how to protect yourself in situations and scenarios that may occur in your vehicle, for example, or in our concealed permit courses, when we, while you're at the ATM, and being aware there. And we target certain high-risk areas where we really talk about awareness. But general awareness, yes. Putting them into nice little boxes and condition codes, I think it's kind of counterproductive.
Okay, I'm going to go back now real quick and touch on something you mentioned before. So we talk about fundamentals and basic marksmanship, which, everybody needs to at least have the fundamentals.
Right.
But there is a huge difference between, say, precision shooting and, of course, what we call practical shooting.
Right.
And that's one of those things that I think a lot of people who come from a traditional shooting background have a hard time accepting. And, at times, and I think you'll probably agree with me here, because I've been around a lot of pro shooters, and they talk about the difference between shooting competition, yet what's applicable there versus, like if you're sitting, with one hand in the pocket, one eye, and one hand and shooting, a classical match course. The thing I thought was interesting, I don't remember which guy it was Rob Latham or one of the other guys who said that I thought was very interesting when he talked about shooting from 3 to 5 yards.
Right.
And the difference between, okay, at 3 yards, he's not using his sights.
No, neither am I.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody is.
And it's the difference between, hey, how steady can you hold the gun versus can you get a good sight picture?
Right.
And I think that's one of the hardest things for a lot of people to understand in a situation like that, because I mean, I've seen it too. I mean, obviously you've seen horror stories. I mean, I've seen people miss a target literally 5 yards away because they fling something up and they can't hold a gun steady.
Right. Well, I can tell you the some of the realities, neurologically speaking, where is your focus? And physiologically speaking, where is your focus when you're presented with a threat? Somebody pops up with a knife, a gun, or even startles you, or there's a car backfiring, or whatever the case may be. Where's your focus? Your focus isn't, if you've got to present the firearm and drive the gun out, you're not focused on your sights. I don't care who you are. I don't care how many classes you've been to. You're focusing on the guy that's about to kill you or hurt you or do whatever he's going to do to you. So that's where your focus needs to remain. You look through your sights, and Rob Pincus is a very good friend of mine, and you know, we talk about this stuff quite a bit.
Oh, he's outstanding. He's outstanding.
It's all mechanics. It really is all mechanics. It's driving that gun out in front of you at eye level, getting that thumb out there, driving that thumb, pointing with the thumb, focusing on the threat, and engaging the threat. Because the majority of your defensive encounters, if you watch video and video and video, I mean, they're countless all over the internet. ASP does a great job, you know, dissecting those videos. Where do they happen? They're 3 to 7 yards, which is prime territory for unsighted fire. And I am of the mantra, if you use your sights when you have to.
Exactly.
But the reality is you're not going to even see them. I rarely, if ever, use my sights. The only time I use my sights is when I'm doing fundamental type classes and we're going through fundamental shooting, where you have to have that accurate hit. Some of my followers are going to make fun of me because of the black dot thing, but you know, it's well, I missed a black dot during class one time.
Yeah.
So now I just compensate by making the black dot a little bigger, and I hit it every time. But yeah, go ahead.
No. I was going to say, before we go any further, folks, the name he dropped there, Rob Pincus. If you don't know who Rob Pincus is, by all means, please Google his name.
Yeah, Google his name.
You'll know right away.
Yeah. Yeah, he and Leatham did a really good Worlds Collide thing. You alluded to the competition shooters and the applicability in a defensive situation, and you know that's another kind of touchy subject, and it's not touchy with me because I think they both have a place.
Absolutely.
You know, but boy, I tell you what, people can get real defensive. You get the defensive shooting instructors on one side who say, "Well, that's going to get you killed in combat." And then you get the other guy, you know, the competition shooters on the other side saying, well, we're training under stress. The reality is there's only a very few things that are going to, quote, get you killed in combat. One is not training. Okay.
Yep.
2 is not carrying. And 3 is bad luck.
Yeah. And you can't do anything about number 3.
No, you can't do anything about number 3. So, you know, I'm of the mindset, I work with, you know, Kevin Travis, the SoCo 3-gun down here, you know, and I used to be kind of that mindset because of some of the gaming that would go on with 3-gun. And then I went out and kind of participated and looked at and watched some of the shooters out there. And it really kind of changed my attitude a little bit because although they do game it, they are shooting under stress. They are shooting for speed. They are shooting for accuracy. They're doing all the things that we want to do in defensive shooting, and they're doing it under time stress. While I'm not a big fan of timers and time stress, it is stressful. They are competing.
Absolutely.
You know, so I think there is a place for quote gaming in the defensive shooting world, and I think if you haven't seen the series Rob Pincus and Leatham did, Worlds Collide, you got to watch it.
It's excellent. No, I've seen it. It's outstanding.
Yeah.
And I would say this. You know, because like you said, a lot of people get defensive, but there's stuff to be learned. I mean, J.J. Wakaza, probably one of the best pistol shooters in the world.
Right.
And not, you know, and I don't want to, you know, I hate to say, you know, because a lot of people see pro shooters, and I won't say that they're models of what's a fit person, if you know what I mean.
Right.
But you know, you'll go look at a guy like JJ, and he stays in shape. He's in outstanding physical shape. Yeah. And a lot of the stuff he teaches, you know, people will say, oh, well, yeah, you should competition. Well, you know what? No. I mean, a lot of it's very practical for any situation, you know, about trigger reset, about, you know, same thing about, you know, your distance, where you're using sights, and then at what point where you have to use your sights. And I think the key word in this that I want, if nobody takes anything else away from this discussion tonight, the key word being training. If you don't train, if you don't practice, and I don't care if you're a competition shooter, I don't care if you're a precision shooter, I don't care, you know, I mean, if you have a concealed carry license and you haven't practiced drawing from what you're carrying, then you're an idiot. And, you know, God forbid you get somebody killed by being stupid. So you have to practice, you have to train. One of the reasons I'm even doing this podcast is because there are people out there who can teach you, and you can take away from that and train properly. And Robert, I know you, I've been to the range 100 times, and I know you've seen the horror stories too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you've seen it. We've seen it all.
Oh yeah, pretty much. I think it is. I'll go back to what I said initially. It's a shocker for a lot of people that come out to even an introductory course who have been in the military, who have been in law enforcement, who have, shot competition, who have done these things, and they realize really quickly that one, shooting's a perishable skill. It's not like riding a bike. You don't just get back up on it. If you take 6 months off shooting, you're basically starting from scratch. I can tell you that from experience. I had a surgery, and then I was out of shooting for 3 months. I came back, and I was a train wreck. But they're always shocked at how much they've taken away, or they take away from even a basic intro defensive handgun course, and the mechanics of shooting that they didn't even know they didn't know. And I think that's the biggest takeaway as far as training goes, is knowing what you don't know, recognizing what you don't know, and doing something about it, and then parking your ego at the door. I take classes from other instructors. I have other instructors teach me. Rob's come down and done, classes with us. Dale Comstock's come down and done classes with us. I'm begging Will Petty to come do a Worlds Collide with me, because we teach civilian vehicle counter ambush and he does the law enforcement side. So I really think that would be an interesting combination there. But even professionals, you have to train. If you're going to carry on a daily basis, you have to train. And again, we can go back to the YouTube videos of shootings where people have, had to use their weapon in self-defense, and we see all the mistakes.
Sure. And
all the mistakes are made because of lack of training. And I watched one where a shop owner ended up dead on the floor because he didn't carry around in a chamber. It's like, why are you even carrying a gun? It's a brick.
Right.
So yeah, I think recognizing that you need training, recognizing that what your weaknesses are, and admitting those weaknesses to yourself. And I call them weaknesses. I don't call them, the whatever the fluffy term is for it, or politically correct term is for it now. There's strengths and there's weaknesses, and you've got to recognize your weaknesses, and you've got to train those weaknesses, and then you got to train to fail.
Absolutely.
And what I mean by train to fail is you've got to push yourself to a point where you're outside your comfort zone. You're failing to hit the target. Because if you don't train to fail, you'll never know your limits.
Absolutely.
You'll just train within your comfort zone all the time, and you'll never improve. So
absolutely. Yeah, you have to push the envelope. And go back real quick to something you said, about shooting being a perishable skill and everything. Mm-hmm. The difference is, and I'm going to say this, for people who haven't spent time, and I'll be brutally honest, I mean, I'm one who literally, during most of their military career on training cycle, literally in within a week, put close to 5,000 to 7,000 rounds downrange.
Mm-hmm.
That is the kind of foundation that when you talk about people who are in the kind of units that are special, or a pro shooter for that matter,
right?
If you're a novice, you're not going to have that kind of foundation.
No,
you're not. And if you're going to learn, though, those are the people you need to go to who have that foundation, who have spent those hours and have basically punched that many rounds down the range. And those are the people you need to pay attention to, because there are so many out there who think, yeah, I got a gun. Or mm-hmm. I went out and we'll talk about this a little bit longer when we talk about, concealed carry and guys who, some states who have constitutional carry, which I'm not a big fan of, or states that have concealed carry permits. You have to do classes, etc., and then maybe do a range qual. And you know, I've seen the range qual, and it's really not what I would call a test. You know, I mean, for someone to really seriously be going out carrying a gun on a daily basis. Now, I'm going to flip flop real quick. So, if you're a novice now, put yourself into a novice shoes. Guy went out, has never had any formal training, maybe went to the range, rented a gun, fired a few rounds, bought his first gun. What should you, as a novice, maybe only fired a few times, never fired, what should you look for in an instructor? Because there's tons of frauds out there. You and I both know that too.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is to vet your instructors. I mean, I'm a board member at Pikes Peak Gun Club now, board of directors member, and one of the managers over at Pikes Peak Gun Club said you can't swing open the door without an instructor now, and it's true. I mean, everybody is a firearms instructor. First thing a novice shooter needs to do is look past the marketing. You know, because there's a lot of good firearms instructors out there that don't know how to market their business. And there's a lot of bad firearms instructors that are very good at marketing. I know I'll probably ruffle some feathers, but you know, I don't care. People's lives are at stake. Vet your instructors, okay? Verify, call people, call their students. I mean, I have, you know, students that'll be willing to take calls from prospective students, but vet your instructors. Don't just believe the marketing hype. Check them out. Get on social media. Look at their reviews. Look at, you know, Q&As that they've done in the past. Look at podcasts that they've done in the past. Maybe watch some videos that they've done in the past. Talk to their former students. You know, they'll tell you the truth. You know, matter of fact, I'm going to be on a podcast Tuesday to basically run down one of my courses. And what we do is we invite one of the students on, you know, to kind of critique the class that we gave them. And I'm not doing the podcast. It's hosted by somebody else, and it's just kind of the format that they use. But I brought my biggest critic to be on the show, as opposed to my best, you know, the student that I knew was going to give me these golden, you know, rave reviews. But I'd say vet your instructor and know where to look to vet those instructors. Look at the Google reviews. Look at, you know, ask them for a reference list, you know, and if they're claiming to be a space shuttle door gunner, ask them for their credentials, and then know what you're looking at, because we've seen there's fake stuff out there all over the place. You know, I mean, I did my job for 18 years. That's what I did, you know. I was nothing special. I was a combat engineer for a while, and I was an artillery guy for a while, you know. But vet your instructors. That's the biggest piece of advice I could give a novice shooter. Don't fall into the marketing hype, and really do your research before you go out, because you're putting your life in that person's hands, really, and they can give you some bad information.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a lot of bad out there. I mean, it's sad to say, but you know, I see the posts, I see the stuff out there, people talking all kinds of wazoo stuff, and it's laughable, except that there are people out there that buy it, and it could get them killed.
Yeah, well, there was a recent, I'm not going to name any names because I'm not in the business of, you know, destroying or talking bad about instructors, fellow instructors or whatnot. But there's a recent, you know, case to be made for one of those where, you know, people are paying money for literally something that would get you shot by a cop.
Yeah.
You know, if you followed the advice of that person. And I'm sure you know who I'm referring to, and I don't need to say it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of that out there, and people don't, like, it goes back to knowing what you don't know. I mean, if you don't know that this is wrong, you know, it's like a Bedouin in the desert, you know, who sees a Yugo, and he gets in this Yugo and he drives it for the first time, and he thinks the Yugo is the best car that ever, you know, existed, because he's never seen a Ferrari. you know.
Right.
So, you know, and students will run into the same thing. You know, just because an instructor is nice to you or made you shoot a bullseye once or, you know, improved you a little bit or whatever, you know, you can learn from anybody. But if you're concerned with the defensive application of the firearm, there's a lot more than just shooting a bullseye.
Absolutely.
Now, shooting a bullseye is important. I mean, the fundamentals are important. The basics are important.
Yep.
I'm not discounting any of that. Um, but there's much more to it. There's a science to defensive shooting that I think a good instructor needs to be able to communicate why they're doing something as opposed to how to do it. We reload like this because we, you know, as opposed to, well, reload like this because I told you to. Doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Right. So.
Okay, now I'm going to go back to concealed carry real quick. And,
Okay.
you know, we talk about the laws and we talk about states versus federal laws. I said before, I'm not a fan of constitutional concealed carry.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think somebody should in some way be able to go through classes, know the laws, and at least demonstrate some kind of ability on a range before they're allowed to carry a gun concealed amongst the population.
Mm-hmm.
And states vary. I mean, some states
right.
have reasonable laws. Some states like California and New Jersey are at the other end of the spectrum where they're absurd. Where, I mean, it's nearly impossible to get a concealed carry permit versus even owning a weapon or buying ammo or doing anything in some states. But what I would say is, one, if you're going to own a firearm, and then secondly, if you're going to get a concealed carry permit, know the law. You need to know the laws that are applicable in your state, or if you're going to go out of state. Otherwise, you're just going to get yourself in trouble, or, you know, God forbid, you know, worst case scenario, something happens, and you can end up in jail. Like, and I know you're going to know what I'm talking about here. For instance, like if you're in a situation where, let's say the jeweler guy pulls a gun on you, you pull a gun, you shoot at him, you wound him. He flees your jewelry store, but then you run outside the jewelry store and continue to shoot at him afterwards. You're in reckless endangerment.
Right. And a myriad of other, depending on the state.
I mean, again, it depends on the state. So you've got to know the laws. You've got to know what you can and you can't do. And it is so important. It's incumbent upon all the people out there who are firearm owners and are going to carry concealed. You have to know the law. And there's nothing worse, because there's already so many gun haters out there that, God forbid, you know, we don't need any more negative press. And I'll segue that into organizations. And we talk about, you know, I'm an NRA member. Several, and here in Illinois, I'm an Illinois State Rifle Association member. There are a lot of good organizations out there that you can get information from and can point you in the right direction. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, let me address constitutional carry for just a second.
Sure.
I'm kind of on the fence with constitutional carry, honestly. Most of my students and most of the students that come to me, one, already have a concealed permit. Okay. Two, they understand that they need more training, and I get just a ton of comments about, I have a concealed permit, but I don't think I'm ready to carry yet. Segue back to constitutional carry. I think, because of my experience and thousands of students that I've taught, and the comments that I receive from those students kind of sways me a little bit, and it puts me on the fence with constitutional carry, because I think a lot of people would start self-identifying the need to get training once they started carrying.
Hopefully.
So I'm kind of on the fence with the
Yeah.
constitutional carry thing. Um, as far as organizations, certifications, I don't know if you want me to talk about that or not, but NRA is a great organization. There are many others out there. I'd say look locally. If you do have like Kansas State Rifle Association, you guys have your Illinois one.
Hmm.
There's a lot of good local organizations out there as well. Um, check with your local gun clubs, you know, because a lot of times they have ends on some of the local organizations that really are working to forward, Second Amendment rights and make sure that lawmakers stay on our side, not roll over. So,
Amen. And it always helps, if
yeah,
the membership grows, it always helps our cause.
yeah,
And then there's competition organizations. I
oh yeah,
belong to
they're all
ISPA,
over. Yeah,
and then there's IDPA. There are
hmm,
significant differences,
hmm,
and one of the things I noticed, and I'm going to go back to training, etc., because I'm more of an IPSC guy, and I've seen some of the
okay,
IDPA stuff, and then I've seen some of the oh God, what do they call them? So loan operator stuff. Yeah.
yeah,
uh, and I don't want to, competition is competition, and
yeah,
God, sincerely, I don't want to dump anybody here, but I was always taught, 2 round double tap per target. If you miss a target, the makeup shot is instant. This 1 round, 1 round, 1 round, 2 rounds, and then come all the way back to other targets. My opinion, it's bad. I don't like it.
I
Now
agree.
again, guys who I don't want to dump on the IDPA guys. That's your competition, but I'm just going to say if you're shooting and moving and you have 5 or 6 targets and you're shooting one target and then running to another target and thinking you're going to come all the way back to 2 or 3 targets, you're screwing up. I mean, I just
Yeah,
that's my opinion, and I've just never been a fan of that kind of training or that mindset.
yeah. Well, I can tell you, if you're shooting 2 or 3 targets,
Yeah.
in reality, you're having a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're having a bad day. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Um, going back to the quote double tap, I
Yeah.
really despise that term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, two
Controlled
rounds.
pairs, even.
Yeah, 2 pairs.
I don't even. What we're teaching now is we shoot until the threat's stopped. And how
Sure.
many rounds does that take? Well, it's an unknown, right?
Right.
So what we've done is, Rob, again, I go back to Rob Pincus. He gave me some
Mm-hmm.
really good advice on this. Change it up. Make the shooter shoot 2 to 5 rounds per engagement as opposed to controlled pairs. And what's really interesting is you can tell the people that have taken training and are competitive shooters, because when you tell them to shoot a string of 2 to 5 rounds per engagement, they'll 1 2 pause, 1 2 pause, 1 2 pause. They'll fire controlled pairs as opposed to stringing those rounds together. And what we're trying to break is that drive the gun out there, fire 2 rounds, suck the gun back in, do your stupid little scan and assess thing,
Oh,
shake your
geez.
head,
Yeah.
the range
Yeah.
theatrics thing,
Yeah. That.
and you're sitting behind them with a staple gun in your hand, and they never
Yeah.
even saw the silver staple gun,
Right.
you know. Um, so we're trying to break people of that controlled pair, double tap, whatever you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
conundrum. We want them to shoot until the threat stopped. So we're training to fire 2 to 6 rounds, string those rounds together, and then we do compartmentalize that scan and assess a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
the way we teach it, as opposed to the 2 rounds, suck your gun in, do your little cool
Oh,
cool guy.
never suck. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
insanity.
Well,
Yeah.
what we teach is, okay, you fired your string 2 to 5, 2 to 6 rounds. Check your threat. Is the threat
Yeah.
down? As you're pulling the weapon back in your chest, you're checking the chamber. You're making sure your weapon's in good condition. Is it still up? You're checking yourself very quickly. Okay, did you take a hit? Okay, I don't know. And while we're doing this, we're also moving. And then you're doing a very deliberate scan. You're looking around for other threats. You're looking for the cop saying, drop your weapon. You're looking for that other concealed permit holder that thinks you're the bad guy. And then the most important thing is you're looking for, where the hell am I moving to? Where's cover? Right? So we've kind of, we've compartmentalized that into a kind of a 4-step process so people can adapt to it a little bit and get away from that control pair, double tap, whatever you want to call it, suck the gun in, do the cool guy thing.
Yeah, I never suck the gun in. And I mean, I'm one of those, if you fire 2 rounds, there's always a third, there's always that extra sight picture if you're actually using your sight. If not, you're shooting until the target drops. And obviously, if a target drops, then you're immediately transitioning and moving to the next one if you're shooting multiple targets.
If there's multiple threats, right? And you've got to be able to identify if there's multiple threats. But like I said, if you're engaging multiple threats in a civilian self-defense encounter,
and hopefully you're not.
Bad day.
I mean, unless you're at a BLM riot or something, where
you're having a really bad day.
Yeah. Normally, if it's a civilian self-defense concealed carry thing, you're probably talking about maybe 1 robber, or maybe 2 or whatever, worst case scenario. But my point is, getting past that range theatrics, or getting past that, or the like I said, the one round, then I'm going to come back to it. You can't come back to a target.
You can't come
back. You don't drop
the
first target. Then you've lost already.
Right. You don't come back to it. I mean, there's no coming back to it, because that guy's, if there is multiple threats, and we do multiple threat engagements in our classes, we have a course in our advanced handgun course, our advanced fighting pistol course, that's completely blind. We have no shoot target set up. You walk into it, no practice, no gaming, no nothing. You walk past a target, you're done. I call an injury on you first, and then the scenario is over. You've just lost, which means you're not here anymore. You're not going home to your family. That's there is no going back to a threat. There is no going, engage this threat with 1 round and drive over here, engage that threat, come back and engage this threat again if you miss. That's not realistic. And you're not going to do that anyway. You're going to be so threat focused, and that's why we concentrate on that good scan and assess and assessing your surroundings, because you will get so threat focused that you won't see that secondary threat. And I go to the Joe Wilcox case as evidence of that in Las Vegas, the Walmart store. I don't know if you are familiar with that shooting. He got point blanked in the back without even getting his gun out of the holster, because he perceived the primary threat. The guy with the rifle said, "Everybody get out, this is a revolution." He starts trailing down the aisles with them. As soon as he gets to a position where he thinks he can make a shot, he goes for his gun, and the wife is standing right behind him, point blanks him, drops him. He lasts 3 minutes in a 47-minute gunfight with cops. Because he didn't even recognize there was another threat, because he was that threat focused. And that's the reality of fighting. The reality isn't, here's 2 targets in front of you, boom, 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 boom. Oh God, I missed. Go back here and hit him.
True. Very true. I want to point up again for people, if you're novices, there's a lot of good stuff on YouTube, honestly, and a lot of the names that we invariably dropped during this conversation. If you check out some of their videos, they have outstanding tips. They have, and actually a buddy of mine, Pat McNamara, has a lot of good stuff out there. Larry Vickers, and then all the pro shooters out there that we mentioned. And that stuff you can get for free online, and you can look at, and it's great advice. I mean, it really is. I mean, and these are guys who do it for a living. So if you want to get good information, that's a great place to go.
I do challenge those that do go to YouTube University to go out and take a class, because there is no substitute at all for having eyes on. Go with a reputable instructor. There are a lot of instructors out there, a lot of hobby instructors. that are really good. A lot of part-time instructors that are really good. I'm a full-time instructor. I'm one of the very few. There aren't very many of us in the country that teach full-time. I'm one of a couple in the state of Colorado that teach full-time. This is what I do for a living. I do it every day. But get out, get some training from somebody reputable, somebody good. I don't care if it's me. I don't care who it is. Just make sure that you vet your instructor and get out there and get trained, and then compare your performance with what you were doing. You know, when you watch the YouTube video on how to present from, you know, appendix carry, for example, or whatever, and test yourself with other eyes watching you.
Yeah, and there's no substitute for being on a range, firing live, drawing, doing all the things, you know, that you should be doing if you want to enhance, and if you want to be properly trained, and if you want to be safe, if you want to be accurate, and if you're going to carry, it's what you need to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you have coming up?
What do I have coming up?
Yeah.
I've got intro carbine coming up on the 9th and 10th, or 9th. I've got carbine 1 on the 10th, I believe it is.
And that's in Colorado?
That's in Colorado. We've got a vehicle counter ambush course on the 30th in Colorado. We're planning our next Texas trip. Obviously, we were going down there this month, but we're not this month.
Yeah.
So we're looking at that. We're looking at getting back up into Minnesota pretty soon. We want to get down to New Mexico sometime this winter. So we'll probably be down in the Albuquerque area sometime this winter is what we're looking at. And then back up north to Minnesota, probably springtime when when I can actually make it in a car up to Minnesota. I don't mind training in the snow and all that. We do it all the time.
But getting there sometimes
in Colorado is just getting there is the problem. But we're setting up again. Once Texas recovers, we'll be back down there again.
Sure. Okay.
And on that note, I've got a friend of mine, Joe Morgan, who's driving the 20-foot trailer of supplies down to Texas on September 11th. So if anybody in the Colorado Springs area wants to donate food, clothing, whatever, we can meet up with you in Colorado Springs, and he's leaving on the 11th to transport that down to the Houston area.
Sure. That's great. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Hopefully down the road, I'm going to have a buddy of mine, Jamie Weedman, also a fellow guy from the unit on here, and we're going to kind of talk along the same lines. He works with Surefire. And I want to say thank you so much, Robert Butler, for coming on tonight.
No problem.
A lot of good information. I hope, you know, people will watch this. Probably didn't have a whole lot of people watching it live, but again, this is archived on YouTube. You can click on the link and watch it anytime afterwards. A lot of good information. Again, I want to give a shout out to my folks, Mike Achina, Spotter Up Team Room, Ace Deuce, Gunslinger Savage, Maxwell, TFI, Brad Simpson, AGTR, Section 8 folks, and our Grunt Style T-shirt, Chicago area folks, and the Black Rifle Coffee Company, also veteran-owned. Check them out if you haven't seen them yet. And my special guest, Robert Butler, you heard it. You know how to get in touch with him. He's on Facebook. If you want to get trained up, check him out. Robert, thank you very much, and I'm going to say good night.
Thank you for having me.